My name is Dr. Kenneth Christie. I'm the program head and a professor in the Human Security and Peacebuilding graduate programs at Royal Roads University. And I am also the president of the Confederation of University Faculty Associations of British Columbia, or CUFA BC. CUFA BC is the provincial voice for more than 5,500 university professors, instructors, lecturers, and academic librarians at the 5 research universities across the province. We work with the faculty associations at Royal Roads University, Simon Fraser University, the University of British Columbia, the University of Northern British Columbia, and the University of Victoria. I would like to respectfully acknowledge that the land on which CUFA BC's office resides is on the traditional, ancestral, and unceded territory of the Coast Salish peoples. We acknowledge with respect the diverse histories and cultures of the Squamish, the Tsleil-Waututh, the Musqueam, and the Stoliot nations of this province. We recognize the inherent Indigenous rights and title, the implementation without qualification of the United Nations Declaration on the Rights of Indigenous Peoples, and our support for the 94 calls to action by the Truth and Reconciliation Commission. So we are here today to represent or to present the winners of the 2023 CUFA BC Distinguished Academics Awards. Each year since 1995, CUFA BC honours the outstanding scholarship and public policy contributions of distinguished academics in BC, academics whose research and scholarly activity have made significant contributions to the community beyond the academy. We believe that the ideas that flow from universities contribute in significant ways to the public good, to our citizenry, and to a democratic landscape, our intellectual life, and our economy. The awards demonstrate the necessity and vitality of public universities' research and scholarly activity. I'm pleased to present the winner of the 2023 CUFA BC Ehor Boyanovsky Academic of the Year Award to Dr. Catherine Nolin. This award recognizes a specific and recent outstanding contribution to the community beyond the academy through research or other scholarly activity. It represents the admiration of colleagues from across institutions, from across disciplines, geographic borders, and beyond. Dr. Nolin joins us to talk about her research. So, Dr. Nolin, for the camera, could you please state your name, rank, and institution?
I'm Catherine Nolin. I'm a professor of geography and chair of the Department of Geography, Earth, and Environmental Sciences at the University of Northern British Columbia in Prince George, BC. We're on the traditional unceded territory of the Lheidli-T'enneh.
Could you tell me a little bit about your research interests briefly?
Sure. So over the past, 3 decades almost, I've had this connection with the country of Guatemala, and I'm really interested in the connection between people and place as a geographer. And I'm most interested in when that connection is disrupted through violence. And so some work focuses on the issue of political violence in Guatemala and the internal armed conflict and those who've survived that and are seeking justice and accountability for those war crimes. And then also the working with communities that are confronted by Canadian mining companies operating on their territories.
So your nominators describe you as a champion for change to Canada's foreign policy regarding the global mining sector, advocating for a legislative framework basically that would hold state agencies and companies legally to account for abuses related to overseas operations by Canadian mining companies. I was wondering if you could tell me a little bit about your work in Guatemala that culminated in the book Testimonial: Canadian Mining in the Aftermath of Genocides in Guatemala.
Well, I'd like to begin by saying this work is done in collaboration and coordination with all sorts of people, including my research partner, Graham Russell, the director of Rights Action, who's a non-practicing lawyer. And he has worked for decades working with communities on community support work. And it was through our collaboration and commitments to the communities to work in solidarity with them that we've been invited into communities who have been affected by Canadian mining companies in incredibly violent ways. And so that work has started in the 1990s, but it was really at the invitation of communities in 2004 when the first return of Canadian mining companies was starting again. And it was at their direction, really, to, as they told us, get these monsters out of here. And it was with that encouragement and support that over the last almost 20 years that we've continued to return and work in collaboration and support with the community members themselves, as well as lawyers and journalists and filmmakers, students, and lots of others. And it's this constellation of people who has worked together that really led to the development of this book, which is an edited collection where we have about 30 contributors who are the members affected, community members themselves who are affected, Indigenous rights leaders, journalists, lawyers, and so on, who are all pushing for this kind of change, for accountability for crimes and violations that take place in Guatemala, but are really Canadian problems. And they're really directing us back to Canada. And that's why we've tried to make the case that we need to figure out a way to legally hold our companies accountable for these crimes and violations.
That's some amazing work. I was wondering, can you tell me, how has the book been received? Was there an experience while you were working on the research project that made you feel incredibly proud of what you were achieving in that sense?
Well, the book has been received in different ways by different groups. And so I think with those of us who work on these issues, and there's lots of mining injustice solidarity groups in Canada and others working for these kinds of outcomes, that it's been received warmly, and we do continue to work together. I would say it's been received with silence now by the Canadian mining sector, and that's a good thing because they we think they interfered with the original publisher that was going to publish this book. And it was really, I think, a case of corporate intimidation of a publisher who then said that they wouldn't publish our book. And so if I think of some of the most proud moments, it was really when people rallied behind us, the Canadian Association of University Teachers, CUFA BC, my university, senior academic leaders at the university, and the Faculty Association, many others who said, you have to find another way to get this book published. And it was through both financial support to do a full libel review of the book, to really demonstrate that what we were saying is forceful but truthful. And it wasn't defamatory to those companies. And so I'm really proud that actually we haven't heard from them, though there are changes on the ground. And I think we'll continue to document that too.
Your nominators have commended you on your intellectual acumen and creative thinking that meets the highest international standards in the field of social geography. I was wondering, throughout your career, you've made contributions to development, enrichment, and dissemination of knowledge. Why is it important to you to engage in research that's central or important to the public interest, or that's in the public interest?
Yeah, I was, I often think of this Mary Oliver poem, and at the end she says, what will you do with this one wild and beautiful life? Yeah. And this is what I want to do with this one life, right? That we've been received so warmly by communities who've suffered outrageous crimes and outrageous violence, and they're embracing us as fellow human beings, that we're not coming in as Canadians or academics or anything like that, that we're in this in a way together to bring our different perspectives and our different positions to be able to work for positive change in the world. And I see my position as a university professor with academic freedom that has responsibilities and rights, but responsibilities to do this kind of work, to speak out on behalf of those who are asking us to amplify their voices in these matters.
If you could tell me a little bit about how does your work advance the calls to action in the Truth and Reconciliation Commission? Because I know there's quite a lot in your work that involves Truth and Reconciliation Commissions.
Yeah, that's an interesting question. Well, one of the areas of that Truth and Reconciliation Commission and the calls to action is to focus on education. And so to use our positions at universities to ensure that we're not only indigenizing but decolonizing our universities and the way in which we share and create knowledge with our students. And so really trying to bring in many voices, and particularly the work I do with Indigenous communities and marginalized communities in Central America, and making those alliances and connections with First Nations communities here, particularly in British Columbia. And so making those connections and alliances so they can also be building relationships together and advocating for change in their own community. So I think that's a really important part of it.
Your work embodies the value of experiential learning. Can you talk a little bit about the role of experience learning in post-secondary education, how it has enabled an expanded sense of global citizenship and responsibilities beyond our own spheres?
Yeah, I think the best part of what I get to do at university is work in that kind of environment of experiential learning. So since 2004, I've organized with Graham Russell of Rights Action field schools to Guatemala, where people, students are not only reading about these issues or listening to them, through documentary films and so on, which is really important, but actually get in the communities. And as my academic supervisor, George Lovell, he always said, we learn geography through the soles of our feet. We have to get out and walk with people to have kind of open eyes, open heart, open minds to seeing new ways of being. And so I think that's incredibly impactful for university students. It certainly was for me as a geography student. That experiential learning was what solidified everything for me and sometimes turned things upside down. Sometimes I actually witnessed the opposite of what I was learning in books, and that's as important as anything.
Very important, thank you. Is there anything finally you'd like to say to the nominators of the CUFA BC Selection Committee about your work?
Oh, well, I'm incredibly thankful for people taking the time to write these nomination letters and think about me in that way. I would say that my name is attached to the award, but all I do is done in collaboration with folks, and so really the students that I work with, the faculty members at the University of Northern BC who've been incredibly wonderful colleagues to work with. Since I arrived there in 2001, and all the people that I work with in Guatemala, including Graham Russell of Rights Action and many, many others. It's a team effort, really, and so I'm really appreciative.
Thank you for joining me today to talk about your work. I want to congratulate you again on being awarded the 2023 CUFA BC Ehor Boyanowski Academic of the Year Award as part of our annual Distinguished Award Series, and I look forward to your continued successes at the University of Northern British Columbia. Thank you.
Thank you.